mental toughness is what defines wrestlers, in my opinion. There's no one like them. There's something special about them as athletes. And I think that it comes from the fact that wrestling is so difficult. The practices are so hard.
Wrestling selects for athleticism, right? Wrestling selects for athleticism. And for you to be competitive in wrestling, you need to be strong, quick, athletic, agile. All those things are important.
Like if you had to pick like one thing that you're good at, like what's the most important thing? It seems to me to be wrestling. Because the wrestlers can just, if you get a real high-level wrestler, they just dictate what happens.
When we talk about wrestling, I don't think it's necessarily the techniques of wrestling. I think it's just the way they're brought up. They're brought up different.
In Dagestan.
Not only Dagestan, they're definitely brought up differently, but like any wrestler is just brought up different.
Oh, toughness. Yes.
A different level of toughness, a different level of competitiveness.
Let's go with wrestling first.
Okay.
I'm tempted to say it's S tier.
S tier?
Yes.
Interesting. I'll put it up there for the starters. Tell me more.
So wrestlers are some of the physically toughest athletes there are, and definitely one of the mentally toughest athletes there are. Both good prerequisites to defend yourself. Wrestling is all about pressure, staying on top, and having control of the person, and they're tough, and they're mean, and they're strong.
Next one is wrestling.
I would say a wrestler is, I've given it an S on the street. Wrestlers are just like built differently. Not even in terms of just skill, but just like if you're a wrestler, you've been through the grind and like you're just so physically strong and mentally strong that I would give it an S.
Because I think wrestlers have the strongest brains, because the strongest minds, the strongest determination, because that sport is so fucking brutal. These great wrestlers who get into fighting, like Chris Weidman, and Cain Velasquez was another one. When he was at his peak, Chris Weidman was a motherfucker, man.
Strong.
Not just, but the mind too. It's not just the body. His body was surely strong, but his mind was just unbreakable.
Right.
He would break guys. You know, and Cain was the same way. Cain was a guy who broke guys. He break them. Because I really firmly believe this to this day, that like the people that get into wrestling, they do it because it's the pursuit. It's not like a Bentley and a mansion and watches and rings and all that bullshit. Like the glory is in victory. It's in the pursuit, and also in victory in the most difficult of circumstances, which is like amateur, high-level, world-class wrestling. Like those, it's so fucking hard. Wrestling's the most important discipline for MMA.
You think?
Yeah, I think it's the foundation, because the wrestler can dictate where the fight takes place. You know, if the wrestler chooses to stand, he can stand. If the wrestler wants to get back up, he can get back up.
Right.
And the wrestler knows how to take the guy down. I always tell people we knew more about martial arts after 4 years of the UFC than had been done in 400 years.
Right.
We knew more. We knew what worked and what didn't work. First of all, they realized wrestling is the most important thing.
Yeah.
It's the most important thing.
Well, it's like
still to this
it's like
day.
a street fight,
Yep.
2.5 hours every day. You know,
Right.
It really is.
It is, yeah. The amount of champions per discipline, you know, it showed like jiu-jitsu, kickboxing, all the different, and then wrestling is number one.
Right.
Number one out of all the different disciplines. That's the most important discipline.
Well, it's the hardest thing to do. Because
Yep.
I mean, you're doing it every day in high school, every day in college, and there's no excuses. You know?
Yep. And the most mentally tough too.
Yeah.
Because first of all, they're cutting weight. They're cutting weight the day of the event. They're competing dehydrated and exhausted. And wrestlers, amongst all athletes that I've ever met, take pride in being miserable.
Yeah.
They really do.
You're talking about the discomfort thing. Part of that is that, you know, when you go to a college wrestling program, it's like you have 40, black belt, right? Jiu-jitsu black belts. And not even just black belts, like world class, 19 to 23, in their physical prime, ready to fight each other every single day. And so you get used to this grind, dealing with people, battling people, discomfort every single day. Wrestlers get used to this grind where you just don't see that in other sports.
I think that aspect of wrestling is one of the biggest tools that they take into the octagon, the mental toughness, and that ability to, I mean, the grind. It's a badge of honor in wrestling to be able to handle the grind. It's the most important foundation. It's everything in MMA. If you can't wrestle, good luck, because unless you can land a wild shot like Jorge Masvidal and Ben Askren, unless you get that wild shot off right away and knock the guy out, it's a long night against one of the best wrestlers.
Right. And that wild shot, are you going to be able to do that every time?
Most likely no.
Yeah.
If you look at like overall success rate, wrestlers have a huge percentage of wins. Yeah, here it is. It is Adam. Adam Hunter put it up there. Look at that. 28 professional champions from wrestling. The second place is Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. Third place is boxing, and then kickboxing. Below that, Muay Thai. And then 2 Taekwondo and 1 Karate. It's amazing.
All right, but the jiu-jitsu, how many of those champions were in the first few years? Because
Right.
as soon as we figured it out.
Well, now everybody does everything. But I still think that base is the most important base. The wrestling base. Because a dominant wrestler, a guy like a Daniel Cormier, a guy like a John Jones, a guy who's an elite wrestler, they have that advantage over everybody. If shit gets weird, they can take the guy down at any time. Or if they just decide to impose their will, they can take the guy down. Or if you want to take them down because they're out-striking you, you can't because they're wrestling so good. It's just such a giant advantage.
Sprawl and snap your head into the mat.
Yeah.
So, like, when you go to jiu-jitsu school, the first thing you learn how to do is bow to mat and kiss the instructor's ass. That's it. You know, you bow to mat, and then you're learning self-defense, and you're learning respect. And wrestling, it's not about that.
Right.
It's about dominating. It's about winning, dominating. So they have years of experience of doing that, like just that mindset.
It's also about being uncomfortable all the time.
Yeah, and it's like, they're just, the room is always rough. It's always tough. Like, you go to a jiu-jitsu school, it's a bunch of dudes smoking pot, laying back. They roll 5 minutes, sit back, smoke for 30, roll another 5 minutes.
Yeah.
You go to a wrestling room, it's hot, sweaty, they're all uncomfortable, they're all grinding. So you take that guy and you teach him some basic jiu-jitsu, you got a champ.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's just the mindset for me.
Physical strength too.
Yeah, and
controlling
they
people
got
around.
physical strength, the grip strength, like that's so important. Like for me, like grips is everything. And in wrestling, you learn a lot of that early.
Yeah.
So I feel like that's kind of the difference. They're just brought up different.